If you don't want to listen to a grown man metaphorically beat off his favourite all-time player, then this probably ain't the video for you, my friend. But your GOAT and mine, DCE, Daly Cherry Evans, the GOAT, the greatest Eagle of all time, the greatest athlete to ever walk across this planet, just played his 300th NRL game this past Saturday. And I could sit here and talk about and review some of the games, but outside of really the Cowboys losing to the Titans, it was pretty much a standard weekend of rugby league. So I thought, let's go big. Let's celebrate this huge milestone. And I haven't done one of these before, but I thought if I'm ever going to do one, I better do one when I'm talking about my favourite player of all time. Now, I probably wouldn't say my favourite athlete, but definitely my favourite NRL player, and the NRL is the competition I follow the most. But it is interesting. I've never done one of these before, so I don't really know where to start. So let's just look at the big picture. Cherry Evans has now played 300 NRL matches, the 49th player to do so, and surprisingly, the first ever player to play 300 games in the same position. He's never played a game at 5'8". Outside of Origin, he's never played a game off the bench. In all 300 NRL games for DCE, he's played at halfback. The first player to ever do so, which is pretty cool. In those 300 games, he scored 83 tries, a total win percentage of 53%, a premiership winner, a Dally M Halfback of the Year, a Clive Churchill winner, multiple-time Player of the Year awards at the Manly Sea Eagles. He's scored 674 points. He's got 227 try assists, over 164 dropouts, averages 342 kicking meters. Yeah, they're pretty cool. It's pretty cool stats when you consider that this bloke, he's had one heck of a career, especially off the field. He's had a lot of drama around him, but when you sum up DCE, certainly when it comes to his competitors in the halfback position in the NRL era, you'd probably say he's fourth all time. 1998 to now, you'd probably have Thurston or Joey number 1 and number 2. You'd have Cronk number 3. And then when you think about it, I don't think you'd have anyone else above DCE. Now, Nathan Cleary will probably eventually overtake Cherry. They're sort of neck and neck at the moment. I think if Cleary goes on to 3-peat, then maybe you chuck him fourth best. But when you consider guys that have played during the NRL era, there's not many that beat DC. I mean, Ricky Stewart, his best was probably before the NRL era. Brett Kamali, Scotty Prince, James Maloney, Mitchell Pearce, all these players are great halfbacks, but I think DCE is above them all. I think he's probably fourth best halfback of all time. And when you consider what he's done at Origin, most consecutive games as halfback for the Queensland Maroons, he's beaten guys like Alfie, Thurston, Cronk, and I think he's fourth most capped all time. To put it into perspective, Gordon Tallis is one of Queensland's most famous captains. DCE has captained more games than Gordon Tallis did. But what Cherry has done, and look, that's obviously my opinion, I'd have him fourth. If you didn't have him fourth, then I completely understand, but he's got to be at least in the discussion for a top 5 halfback of the NRL era in the game's most important position. It's been a crazy ride for the little halfback too. I mean, you're coming in to the competition in one of the best sides, one of the current dynasties in the competition, and he puts up a premiership winning year as a halfback in his first ever season. Like, imagine if Lockie Ilias did that last season, took the Rabbitohs, and they won a comp straight away. That is how rare it is. That's the main reason we didn't have the Rabbitohs winning the comp, most of us last year, is because Lockie Ilias was just so young and so unproven. It's probably the best rookie year of all time. I mean, Sean Johnson, he was the same year, and obviously he didn't get it. There's not many people who win a premiership, played a key role in that premiership, and then went on to debut for Australia in that same year. He went on to debut for Queensland 2 years later. He picked up the Clive Churchill in a losing side, which happened for the first time ever, and it was going really well for Chairs up until about 2015, when, of course, the infamous DCE was the most notable man to ever do it. Cameron Smith did it, James Tedesco didn't, but no one wants to hear about that because DCE did backflip, and look, I totally get it. A lot of people wouldn't have, but let's face it, it's similar to the Joseph Suaalii thing, and I really defended him when he copped it for his decision he made to go to rugby union on $1 million. But Cherry Evans was offered a lifetime deal. The biggest we've ever seen, the biggest we've yet to see since probably Nathan Cleary's, but 8 years, $10 million, which made him the highest paid player pretty much until Cleary and now Kalen Ponga. He's third at the moment, but still that deal from 2015, still in 2023 means he's in the top 5 highest paid players. Insane. And I think nearly anyone, think about it. If anyone was offered a position, let's say you were a bus driver and you got offered to go to the Gold Coast out of Sydney, and instead your Sydney depot offered you $10 million for 8 years. Guaranteed. You could break your leg tomorrow and you're still going to get paid just over $1 million a season. Anybody who has a human living brain would take that deal. So look, I'm not going to sit here and say that it was smart from DCE to backflip, because look, let's face it, it ruined his reputation for a lot of years, and it did coincide, unfortunately, with Manly having to let go of some players from that dynasty when he came in. Guys like Glenn Stewart, Anthony Watmo were all moved on. Premiership winners, multiple-time premiership winners. Guys who could have been 3-time premiership winners if it wasn't for the Melbourne Storm, those cheating bastards. I mean, he's not as bad now, but he's still a controversial figure, even at his own club. I don't think it's been until the past few years because of what he's mainly done for Queensland at the Origin level, but also what he's done for Manly. I mean, I was going to save this to the end, but I think my biggest testament for Cherry Evans is that we saw Mitchell Moses in 2019. We saw Luke Brooks in 2018. We've seen Nathan Cleary the past few years. We've seen Josh Reynolds, Trent Hodkinson, Mitchell Pearce. All these players since DCE debuted in 2011 have all had their years, all had their few years where they've been probably one of, if not the best halfback in the competition. But every year since he's debuted, DCE has been a top 3 halfback, maybe a top 10 player in the competition. The Dally M's prove it. I know he hasn't won one yet. It's probably the only thing he has yet to do is actually win the Dally M, but he's still a Dally M halfback of the year. And even when Tommy had that crazy year in 2021, he was still up there. Even last year, when we lost 8 games in a row because of the rainbow colour, well, he was still near the top. He finished like 6. On a 7-game losing streak, he still finished 6 in the Dally M's. And back to that backflip earlier. I mean, look, I don't want to sound like a rude here, but it did ruin Ash Taylor's career. He couldn't live up to the price tag. DCE signed a ridiculous $10 million deal for 8 years. And you know what's crazy? Is that was the most ridiculous, the most insane deal we've ever seen in Australian sport. The craziest part is that he's almost lived up to it. Now, maybe you could say that maybe at the start he didn't live up to it, but I feel like overall, as a collective, no one sits here and scoffs at DC's 1.2 the way we sit here and scoff at Luke Brooks' 1.1. Moses Mbye was on 900k. No one critiques Cherry's contract. We all know it exists, but no one ever complains about it because he's lived up to it. Obviously, the top 3 halfback thing is a bit biased for me because I'm a New South Welshman. But the redemption arc he's had at Origin, what he has done to the Queensland Maroons, he had to become the captain, the figurehead for Queensland after their greatest period ever, probably the greatest team we've ever seen. He took over and became the figurehead. He was thrown to the wolves in 2018, blood for the future. He came in, got man of the match in Game 3, was made captain in 2019, and if you had told anyone that he'd go on to win what? 3 of the next 5 series when New South Wales had just debuted Tedesco, The Fox, Latrell Mitchell, Tom Trbojevic, Jake Trbojevic, Nathan Cleary, James Maloney was still there, Boyd Cordner, you would have been laughed out of the building. And yet somehow, despite a 1 series having the worst team of all time, despite every game they weren't the favourites, they were the underdogs, and despite him missing Cameron Munster for several games, including the decider of last year's series, he got the job done. And now, not only is he a Queensland legend, not only is he a Queensland Maroons legend, he's up there as one of the best players of all time. Now, I don't think he's going to get a statue outside of Suncorp, no. But he's going to be up there, and he's going to be remembered in the same way Alfie is, as Kevin Walters is, as Gord Tallis is. And it sucks, because he's my favourite player ever, and he's a Queenslander. No one understands the relationship I have with this man. But what he has done in Origin, that Game 3 performance last series, no Cameron Munster, the go-to man goes down, and he kicked New South Wales to death when they had the back three of James Tedesco, Daniel Tupou, and Brian To'o, the greatest meter eaters, two, maybe three of the best meter eaters we've seen in the NRL for the decade, and DCE kicked him to absolute death. One of the best performances I've seen from a halfback at Origin level, and that's a Blues fan saying that. I know I'm a Cherry fan, but that's a Blues fan saying that. Now, I don't think, he's the sole reason they're winning, obviously. Reece Walsh, Kalen Ponga, Cameron Munster, these guys have all played their part. But the one consistent who's always been there, despite the Blues always being favourites, is Cherry. You can't dispute that. And I sit here at Origin time and I think to myself, I wish we had this Cherry at club level, but he's a different player there because he's got these guns around him. And for Manly, he's got to do it all himself, especially when Tommy is out. And boy, does he do it all himself. The way they're playing at the moment, he could be in career best form. He's like Ben Hunt from last year, but better. SJ is sitting third, and I could completely understand if you thought he was the form halfback of the competition. And I guess wins at the end of the day are what's most important. But you swap Cherry Evans out with Nathan Cleary, Sean Johnson, Lockie Ilias. Those teams would all be just as good as Penrith. Penrith might even be better. He proves it every time in the Origin arena. We always sit here and we say Cleary's better than Cherry Evans, and I get it. Cleary is about to win his third competition in a row potentially, and we always say he's the reason there. The Kangaroos, the halfback discussion last year, even towards the end, I was like, if they pick Cleary, I totally get it. But then we have the three. The most important, the most competitive, the biggest games for Australian Rugby League, and every single time on the biggest stage, this giraffe comes out and he puts the big chin to the sword. And what he has done for Origin, what he is doing at the moment at 34 years old, just typifies what a career it has been for my favourite player of all time. So I could have sat here, reviewed some of the games, but I thought, let's just ramble about how good this bloke is because he deserves it. And you know what? I bet he's subscribed and I bet he's going to love this video. So shout out to you, Ches. I know you watch. Lol. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comment section below, where do you rank the Giraffe, Daly, Cherry Gotens all time and NRL era? I never got to see Prime Joey, Prime Alfie, but out of the halfbacks I've seen, outside of Thurston and Cronk, who are potentially immortals, I think he's right there. And I think he's going to go down there as Manly's best ever 7, one of Manly's best ever period, and one of Queensland's best ever, which is crazy because the reaction from Queenslanders, especially after that backflip, will never be forgotten. And unfortunately, it will always be a part of DC's legacy. But sometimes the best legacies, like we've seen in other sports, are about overcoming adversity. And I don't think a player has done it quite like DCE in the NRL era. So make sure, ladies and gentlemen, do the big three. Smash that like button, drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching me ramble. I'll see you all in the next one.